Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this evening's meeting of the Stronca Council Select Committee. I'm Peter Bolton, chairing the meeting. I don't have a vice chairman. Are you happy for me to continue without a vice chairman, or would someone like to step up? So,
Point of order, could I ask the officers present, are we quorate for this?
We are.
Shame. Shame. Yeah. Fine. This meeting is to be webcast. Members are reminded of the need to activate their microphones before speaking. The chairman will read the following announcement. The chairman would like to remind everybody present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of repeated viewing or another use by such third parties. If you are seated in the lower public seating area, it is likely that the recording cameras will capture your image, and this will result in the possibility that your image will become part of the broadcast. This may infringe your human and data protection rights, and if you wish to avoid this, you should move to the upper public gallery. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Chairman, we have apologies from Councillors Matthews, Bassett and Joggier.
Thank you. Substitute members.
Yes, Chairman, we have Councillor Nwiki for Councillor Joggier.
Welcome. Thank you. Notes of the previous meeting. Can we take these as being read? Councillor Brooks.
Just have a query, please, Chair.
Yeah.
On page 6 of the minutes, under item 39 of the corporate plan action, quarter 3, there was something that Councillor Bassett asked a question, and it said something would be put into the minutes, but it wasn't. And then there was something else that I asked for on the digital customer journey on page 7, and that I've not yet had. The bottom of page 7, it said copies would be sent to Councillor Brooks and Neville.
Yes, I noticed that something hadn't been added to the minutes.
I'm sure it's just an oversight. Yeah.
Andrew, your microphone.
Oh, sorry.
I'll take that away, Councillor Brooks, and make sure you get that document, or the committee gets the document.
Thank you. And the same for Councillor Bassett's comment. Thank you. Otherwise, any other points? Can we accept these as a fair record?
Councillor Bolton, Councillor Neville would like to speak.
Oh, right, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry,
yes.
yeah.
On page 7, paragraph 5, it says councillor and then asked about, but it doesn't actually tell us who the councillor is. It's a female councillor because it says later on she was told, but we don't actually know who that female councillor was. It would be nice to, just for the record, if I'm sure the notes are still there from the Democratic Service Officer, if they could just tidy that little thing up. And going back to the bit mentioned at the bottom of page 7, but there are also numerous reports here, closure reports that we asked for at the last meeting to go to various councillors. I haven't received any of the ones I asked for. I don't know about other councillors, but it's over a month ago. It's a month and a half ago now. So I would have thought those reports were already done. So it would have just to me a matter of sending it on, and I haven't received any. So.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Can we
Yeah,
chase
apologies.
that up, please?
Apologies for those councillors who haven't received the reports that have been promised. I will make sure that they get those in the next few days, hopefully.
Because it's only those councillors who requested it would know whether they've received them, so it's helpful to be reminded and we can then forward that on as appropriate. Thank you. And we'll chase up who the lady councillor was. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so can we accept the minutes as... Oh, thank you. Declarations of interests. Councillor Bassett's not here, so there won't be any. Sorry, yes. Item 6, terms of reference and the work programme, which are before us. I don't believe there are any major changes, but anybody would like to speak to that item? Councillor John Whitehouse.
It's just a question really. There's some items here which don't have dates by them, like the digital enablement, which is number 3. I wonder when that was coming to committee. Similarly with item 11 and 13.
Yes. Thank you.
On the digital enablement strategy, currently there's a piece of consultation going on at the moment. We're waiting for the results of that, and then we'll feed that into the strategy itself. So obviously, I think the date that was put in here, well, there wasn't a date that was put in here, but it was hoped that it would come before the end of this council year. So the next meeting of this committee is the 14th of April. I hope it will be available for that, but I can't promise hand on heart at this moment in time. If it isn't, then it will be available into the new calendar year, or new council year rather.
Thank you.
And similarly, I say with 11 and 13. I mean, 11, obviously, it's got to wait for legislation, I suppose, but number 13.
Yes, good.
I'll need to take that one back and talk to the service itself and come forward with a date on that one, if that's okay.
Thank you. Any other issues to be brought up under terms of reference or the work programme? How are we getting on with local election plans? What's the time scale for addressing that?
I think this is usually a report that comes after the elections and talks about experience of how the elections ran
Yes.
themselves and whether there are any learning points that need to be captured and fed into the next
Right.
elections thereafter. And obviously we've got the elections in May, and so this one was done on 14th of September last year. I imagine there'll be a similar report at some point later on in this year.
Right. So there are no problems
No.
foreseen for the future elections, and that will presumably be presented somewhere, because obviously they were held remotely before, and it will need to be presented at some stage, the arrangements for the elections.
I'm not sure that we bring forward the arrangements for the elections. As I say, this was more of a sort of that was a report that reviewed how the elections went last year.
So it's not on our work plan, but presumably it will occur
well,
somewhere.
So that's a completed task, that one.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Item 7, the Learning and Development Programme, which is going to be presented, by Paula. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This report sets out the various programmes that we're implementing that vary from short sessions that we're holding with staff and managers, such as the skill pure sessions, to the wider leadership programme that we're currently running and is still being undertaken. We are currently expanding the roles of our mental health first aiders to take on board being dementia friends and carrying out some training to support those those female members of staff who are going through the menopause, and to offer support for those. We've implemented a new learning management system that goes into slightly more detail on the next report that's on this evening agenda. That's a wider, more flexible system that we've purchased to promote learning and development throughout the organisation. So the report sets out the various programmes and courses that we're currently running. Our apprenticeship programme is going from strength to strength. We are able to use some of the investment for that programme to our existing staff to upskill and to train our existing staff. And as you can see from the report in paragraph 3, we exceed our public sector percentage that we are required to have as apprentices. So they've completely varied in the types of roles and service areas that they currently work in. So the report sets out the information regarding our apprenticeship programme, and we've just got a short paragraph there regarding what's next, and that leads into the next report regarding our new learning management system. So if members have got any questions for me on that particular report, I'm happy to take them.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Not so much questions, but it's a very interesting report, and I think the staff are very fortunate to have such a wide range of resources that they can access. I'm pleased to see in 2.8 it does say that members might also access the customer shoes one, but many, many years ago, when the Staff Resources Library was first set up, a substantial amount of money was approved in order to do that, and one of the conditions was that members should have access to that library as well. And for a few years that happened, but it seems to have completely been forgotten now. And I would just like to ask that members could access more of these resources here than currently seems to be possible, and that maybe someone could really look into, you know, what we could have and build up a resources library for us, which we can access easily. I think it's mentioned somewhere else, but I do think, you know, that was a condition of the money originally, and it just seems to have been forgotten.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. That will be picked up in the next report that's in relation to our new learning management system, Litmus.
Thank you. Councillor John Whitehouse.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up, I mean, it's addressed, I think, slightly in 2.1. Obviously, the council is sort of particularly fragmented at the moment, as we're exacerbated by the hybrid working that's mentioned here, and the fact people just don't see each other in the same way that perhaps they used to see each other. And I wanted to say a bit more about how training needs are identified, and how people, I'm not quite clear which of these are sort of training which is available and which of this is training which people are told or encouraged to go to. So yeah, the two things really, the how do you pick up training needs and make sure that they're addressed, and how you're sort of addressing the sort of general sort of fragmented ways of working that we've got at the moment.
training needs are picked up in various ways by different managers and different teams depending on their requirements. If I can give you an example, that the IT team have produced a skills matrix that they are working to, so the managers are working with the staff within IT to identify those skills that are required to support the work that they're doing. So the training needs are identified through that way. Another example in terms of corporate training needs, we introduced our new structure really just before lockdown. So the leadership programme that has been introduced towards the back end of last year, and that covers all of the levels in the leadership, the management spine, and there are various sessions that they are working on. So they come together, even though it's virtually. Service directors are working together, service managers are working together as a cohort, team managers are working together as a cohort on various training that the organisation has identified that we need to look at, and we believe that they're the sorts of skills and competencies that those are required. So it's done in different ways. In terms of the fragmented nature of the way that we're working, in addition to training courses, the people team run lunch with for new starters as part of their induction, lunch with the chief exec, so they come together for a lunchtime to meet other new starters, meet the chief exec, meet some other officers. There's also coffee mornings, coffee sessions that anybody, you don't have to have an invite, the invitation goes out to all staff and people can just pitch up. Some of the training that we do is still face-to-face, especially around health and safety. You can't do first aid training at a distance. That's quite difficult to do CPR on a screen and things like that. So it's really, it fits what's required. And as we come back into the building, we've very much been talking about how we come together as teams and work together as an organisation using the great space that we've got here. So those discussions are ongoing. So yeah, it's a work in progress.
No, thanks, that's very helpful. You talked about the organisational needs for training. So what are the current organisational training priorities?
Some of it's listed in here, so it has been the development of our management spine, and with the opportunity for our team managers to use that learning to get a formal qualification as well from that the individual modules build up for a management qualification. So more senior parts of the leadership team, it's about developing those new skills around agile working, the new world that we're working in at the moment. So that they've been identified as some skills that are required. Our apprenticeship programme, as I've said, we're using that to upskill some of our staff, but also to progress our first cohorts of apprentices that have come on, to keep those trained and developed. So mental health, obviously going through COVID and understanding the impact of COVID on our staff, identifying that mental health first aiders was a requirement for the organisation as well, and also expanding their role, as I say, to take on some of that dementia friending work and the menopause support.
Thank you. Councillor Sunga.
Thank you, Chairman. I think if we look at 2.7, I think the whole team needs to be congratulated. The target of mental health first aiders, according to Mental Health First Aid England, is 60, and I think our councils and our officers have achieved to fully train 80 people. So that's really, really good. That means that we'll be able to offer support to our apprentices and employees. So just want to say congratulations to the team there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if we can accept that report, thank you. If we can move on to the next item, which is again, Paula, item 8. This is the induction, use of litmus, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This report sets out, it gives a little bit of an update from a request that was made by Councillor Janet Whitehouse regarding ensuring that our staff understand the world of our councillors and the political side of the organisation, how the council works, what the role of the councillor is. So on the back of that request, that has been built into our onboarding process, and e-learning used as part of that process to inform new employees around what it is to work in local government. That is also part of our new litmus system, so that's on as an e-learning course for staff. The new system is a learning management system, so it's far wider than the e-learning system we had previously that just hosted e-learning courses. This particular system we can develop our own courses. It allows flexibility in how we do that. We can host videos, we can host policies, we can host links. It is far more flexible, far more modern than our previous system. So the report really sets out ways in which that system can, the functionality is helping us to develop our employees. And also it does pick up Councillor Whitehouse's earlier point around access for members into this system. It is certainly a discussion that we'll take forward with member services. They can be trained, they can be administrators to enable your access to that training. And some of that can be mandatory training, some of it can be around member safety. I know that there's lots of good pieces of information on the LGA website around member safety. We can host a range of resources for members to dip in and dip out when they want to, but the report sets out some of the functionality of the new system. So I'm happy to take any questions from the committee.
Councillor Helen Kane.
Thank you. Yes, Paula, on page 22, I understand Litmus has the potential to have an area for member learning. But when will that be implemented? Because don't forget, in May we've got elections, we've got new members joining, so that will be very important. And the next question is if we could forward that, if we could market or whatever we want to do to actually take it even further to town and parish councils. Maybe an idea.
Yeah, I will have some discussions about the when. I think there's work being done at the moment by member services to support members in the use of the ICT equipment that they have at the moment. So I think member services are concentrating on that piece of work. But I will need to find out the when. And I don't know about town and parish. I'm just trying to think of why they couldn't. Again, I will find out. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Nigel Bedford, and then...
Thank you, Chairman. I just wondered if we've got a ways of working policy, if that's in place. I can understand the training side of things. But linked to that, I think there's also the government's recommendation now local authorities should be back to 40% working from local authority buildings, how that would tie in with our new strategy of like part working from home and part working from here. When coming to the building in the early parts of the week, there's never a lot of officers around. Just wondering how we're going to actually achieve the increase and the balance so that members of the public, when making inquiries, can get hold of officers. Seems to be a vast number working from home still.
Thank you. We are currently looking at, there is a policy that's been drafted around our ways of working, and the senior team, I think, have or they're about to be consulted on what that looks like. So we've also been very recently having discussions about people coming back into the building now, working together as teams, and I know that that is a subject that's going to be picked up by the Chief Exec at our employee briefing next week. Yeah. So that in terms of answering queries from the public, we should, regardless of where we're sitting, we should be contactable. We should be available to deal with queries, or are you talking about people that are actually physically coming into the building and sorry?
Both really. I mean, I've had a member of public contact me to say that they put in an inquiry around council tax as their example. They had a building that was demolished, and he was told to write in. He'd get a response within, I think it was 10 days. It turned into 4 weeks, and he still hadn't had a response. Only by chasing it, then the officer apologised for the delay. That's really not an acceptable level of service from officers if delays are that long. We should be able to turn stuff around within 7 days. So I'm starting to get concerned now about response times of officers, and I think that needs to be monitored.
Thank you. Andrew Small. Then I'm going to go back to Councillor Neville, who's been patient, and I apologise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'd like to go to something I found very interesting. Was on paragraph 7. It says, although face-to-face learning have been remained beneficial in a COVID, many new starters live further afield, e.g. Liverpool, Bournemouth and Manchester. I was very interested in that, partly because I would like to know the proportion of new starters that are living further afield, because I have concerns that people who are working on a council in Epping Forest actually live quite close to Epping Forest. It benefits, I think, from a lot of people, staff working in or knowing the area well and being able to work in the area a lot of the time. If, on the other hand, a lot of them are remote working most of the time, they're not going to know the area in which they're serving as officers. And I do have concerns about that. So I'd like to know what the proportion is. You may not be able to give that figure for me now, but I think it is rather important going forward, because whilst we do have flexible working through using things like Zoom and all these online platforms, it still holds that if you're working for a particular council area, you should either be working a lot of the time in that area, so you get to know the area very well, or you live close by. Yeah, I'll leave that at that, and I welcome point 2. I just welcome increased access for member training for us.
Yes. Andrew, sorry.
I think the number of staff who are live a great distance away from the district is comparatively few. It follows kind of a normal distribution curve, I suppose, really. Most staff are still concentrated in or around the area of the district. But we do have a few members of staff now who are travel or are employed and live a lot further away. I would say that it does give us flexibility in some areas, particularly in areas of niche expertise. So we can, through having a flexible policy, take on staff who have a particular skill set that we'd struggle to find locally. We have, for example, employed somebody in finance who works in Staffordshire. She does attend the office at least a couple of times a month, and that was part of the understanding. But through that, we managed to obtain a very particular finance skill that is really difficult to find in the market right now, and also a very highly skilled individual in that space as well. If we had been only looking within a very localised area, we would never have found that skill. And through doing that and for finding an individual who we can take onto the books as an employee, we save probably quite a lot of money rather than having to procure that skill, as I say, through as a consultant or somewhere else in the marketplace. So I think there are advantages of being able to take on employees from further afield. Those individuals who are vested employees of the council will engage and invest in the council itself and the area, and seek to understand the nature of the area and its issues, and strive to serve the area as well as anybody, I believe, living in the area itself. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, really, if you were asking for my opinion. I think flexibility is heading back to Councillor Bedford's point in terms of how many staff should be in the office and how often, really. So when we surveyed staff last time, most staff indicated that they'd like to work in the office 2 or 3 days a week. In practice, we haven't seen probably that number choose to return. So one of the things we have found is that the flexibility of working from home in a hybrid fashion is enjoyed by staff, and that makes it attractive in terms of attracting staff to Epping Forest as well. There is a real difficulty right now in finding suitably qualified individuals. The jobs market is very, very hot right now, partly liberated by the ability to be working hybridly. So we are seeing a lot of, for example, people now working in central London without having to travel to central London. So that that takes away from the employees that we would have been able to tap into in a local area. And that's creating quite a lot of pressure in the jobs market. So I think it's important that we also follow suit and make ourselves a flexible employer. What we are doing is encouraging managers to use the space for the purpose for which it was intended, and that's to call their teams in to do collaborative working, really. So group working, sharing ideas, sharing experience, learning, developing, and all those sort of things are things we're encouraging managers to bring their teams in to do. But if they're working on reports or emails or even answering phones, then there's no reason why they can't do that just as well at home. I think it's still, Paul McGuinness made the point earlier, really, it's still a work in progress, I think, in terms of we're still trying to find the right balance. And we're constantly looking at how the organisation is performing, how staff feel about the environment they're working in, to try and make sure that we adjust where we need to get the right balance between office working and home working. And I don't think we're quite there just yet, but we're certainly encouraging staff to make use of this space and make it as attractive and as easy to get to as possible. I think that's probably all I needed to say. I wanted to say thank you, Chair. I don't know if Paul has got anything to add.
Thank you. Councillor Janet Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. I need to correct a statement in paragraph 1. It's not quite what happened. I made a comment at scrutiny, and as a result of that, 2 HR officers invited me to go and have a discussion. And actually, they told me that what they did was to direct the staff to 2 items on the website. I mean, it sounds here as if we discussed it and I agreed that this was what was right. I mean, I don't think that was adequate. and I was surprised to hear that was all that the staff were given. So I'd just like to make clear that I didn't actually agree this is the way we should go. I was pleased to see that Gary is now doing a presentation to, is available as well. I presume that's based on what he does for councillors in the induction that new councillors get, but I don't know. It says here about officers being directed to the councillor portal. I'm just wondering what exactly that is. It wasn't the word terminology that was used when I met with the officers. But if this is all they get, I still don't think it's adequate. I know the Constitution isn't the most wonderful, enthralling document to read, but it does have some really important stuff in it. And Article 17 is about the relationship between officers and members, about information sharing, how it should be done. And it's really important that senior officers in particular understand what information they should be giving to political groups and to individuals who go to them for information. And I just wonder, are they directed to that? And other bits of the Constitution, the one on overview and scrutiny is quite important for officers who are dealing with overview and scrutiny to really understand what that covers. So perhaps Paula could tell me whether officers are directed to the relevant bits of the Constitution so they read that. And if not, can they please be directed to Article 17, Appendix 2? Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
Thank you. I don't know is the answer. I was just trying to think in terms of our turnover at a senior level, whether we've actually had to do that because it's been a requirement for our senior management that would be required to have that interface with members. But I'll take it away, consider it, and I don't see why not.
And if I could just add, it's a sort of information that would have automatically passed on when people are all in the same building and senior officers were, directing new members, new officers in what they should be doing. But because people are working so separately, it probably doesn't. But it's really important information the senior officers had.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, and then I'll get Councillor
This seems
Avey
to be the
right
most
before I-
relevant part of the agenda for me to just raise something, which I think some of you know I feel rather passionately about. About October 2020, or was it 2019? Apologies, this pandemic has made time seem strange. We received an excellent map of the different directors and who was in charge and various how it came down. It's just incredibly helpful because there have been so many departures in certain areas. I think every member here would know the people at the top. But it's just, with people like Kim Durrani leaving, I just use that as an example. It's really, really helpful to see how the lines of do go up the organisation, and then it quickly became out of date with the service directors, etc. Yeah, but I think a lot of members would like to know that, actually. People that are, I'm sure the cabinet know, but I'm not in the cabinet.
Thank you.
Just sorry to say that I've got a revised organisational structure in my inbox just to sign off. It will be done in the next couple of days and then distributed to all members.
Thank you. Councillor John, and then I'll get...
Thanks. Yeah, actually, just picking up on one of the earlier points from the main point I was going to make. As an example, there's a conceptual difference between the civil service model and the local government model, which people aren't going to know through telepathy or just by being in proximity to civic offices. It's something that people wouldn't know unless they had either come in through a local government pathway, and of course a lot of the staff we recruit don't come in from local government, they come in from the private sector or as a first job, or from the civil service or agencies or whatever. So it's very easy to assume people may have knowledge that they don't have, and that's where I think inductions can be so important. But the other point I was going to make is Mrs. Ford was talking about making super offices easy to get to for people to encourage them to use it, and just sort of a bit of feedback. I get the impression that members of staff having similar sort of frustrations about parking that members do, and this was something that was raised the very first time the accommodation project and what we'll do with the civic centre came up. Parking was raised, and it's not good that it sort of remains a sort of an outstanding issue even after the project's been closed down.
Andrew.
I think it's one of those issues, if I'm honest with you, that's more apparent than real. We still have many car parking spaces that are available each day and just aren't taken up. So that there are spaces there. I mean, there's a question about why staff aren't returning, perhaps in the numbers that we expected. In my belief, I think it's just because they're more comfortable at home sometimes, really, and it's probably easier to stay at home than it is to come into the office. I think parking is perceived to be an issue, and it really isn't. So there's plenty of opportunities to park in the town for those staff that want to come in, and certainly enough to accommodate those staff that probably would come in. So what we're trying to do is to use the management structure to arrange meetings in the office for their staff to come in and to find out for themselves that actually it's not the problem that they perhaps perceived that it might be, really. So that's certainly a message that we're putting out to all managers within the organisation, and encouraging staff to bring their staff in. I think it's only recently, I mean, in the last few weeks or months even, really, that COVID seems to have dissipated as a kind of a concern in people's minds to the most part. So I think now is that time where, and particularly with spring approaching as well, is that we actually actively encourage staff to come in and make use of the facilities and realise that it's a great space to make use of and to collaborate in. Myself using it much more frequently now, and prefer to some extent being in the office, certainly for certain things, certain tasks. But equally, that there are times when I'm more productive at home if it's just to get on with reading through reports and doing paperwork, for example. So it's about being intelligent in terms of how you do use that space, but the opportunities are there for staff, and we will encourage them to come in and realise that it actually is there are no real impediments to actually using their space.
I think perceptions can be quite powerful things.
Councillor Nigel Avey. Sorry, you've had to wait. But
no, Chairman, and really this is, before I start with my question, I'll look forward to that management organogram. It'll be, I think, exceptionally good. This is ignorance on my part, or just really poor memory because of my age. The new platform, Litmus, do we license that from an external party? And how much are we paying monthly, annually?
Thank you, Paula.
Yeah, it's a hosted system, and the cost it's an annual cost, and I think I will get it confirmed for the minutes, and I think it's about £11,000. And we used to pay for our previous system as well, so it comes out of the training budget. So it's that balance between face-to-face training and what we can offer on a different platform by using very different media.
Is that the sole cost, or are there other costs associated with the provision of a Litmus system?
Officers' time in terms of content. If we're doing specific service training, it would be the officers' time, but it can certainly be done in a more interactive and vibrant way than perhaps previously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Janet Whitehouse. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Just following up on Councillor Brooks's request, I think many of us need more than just a diagrammatic structure chart. We see the names of teams coming down when we have reports, but it really doesn't mean anything to us. I mean, what I would like to see is underneath the diagrams, the names of the teams that come under that particular directorate, the team leader, and how many people are in the team and what it does. Because there's been such big changes. I know environmental health officers are no longer all together. They're spread out into different teams because of different functions they have. But it would be really helpful to know what these different teams do. So really, I think we need more than just a diagram. We need a lot more information because it's a complete mystery to most of us as to what the structure of the council now is.
I believe, if I recall the structures in my inbox, other than I think it does include team managers. So I think that is there. I don't think it includes a full description of what each team does, though. I think that's. Let's circulate the diagram that's there, and then we'll receive feedback from members in terms of whether it provides the information they want or not.
Yes. So a thumbnail sketch. Invite comments. I think to go down the whole hierarchy would prove impossible, wouldn't it? But I take Councillor Whitehouse's point, and that will be looked into. Thank you. Any other? Councillor Bedford. Oh, sorry. I haven't got a vice chairman. Sorry, Councillor Brady. Thank you. You're mute.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm just chipping in exactly to say the same, to just support exactly what Councillor Janet Whitehouse has said about training and feeling apart from things. I've been a councillor for 10 years and we got very, very good training again and again in those first few years, and really helped hugely. I feel very sorry for the people now. I mean, part of it is COVID, obviously, that's kept them separate, but I feel very sorry for new councillors. I think, I don't know if I'm looking at them correctly in planning meetings sometimes, but they honestly don't seem to really understand quite a lot what's going on. And I think planning is very, very important because we're all on these planning committees and we take all these very large decisions, very valuable decisions, and lots of the newer councillors do seem to look a bit flummoxed about things. And I really don't think that they've received the same sort of training. We used to get updates. Planning changes all the time, and we'd get updates all the way through on all the latest changes. Now, I haven't been notified of education in those areas, not for years now. And you used to be able to just phone up the relevant planning officer for whatever the issue was, which is I get lots of issues in my wards, and just speak to them on the end of the phone and have things explained, and then we could be the go-between and we could go back to the people and explain them. This new system of having to get tickets and this and that and the other, I have been told by the planning department, and I don't know if this is true, that this whole system has been designed to distance we members from planning from officers because some members have been so rude and inappropriate to officers that they don't want to speak directly to us. If that really is the case, then I believe those individual councillors should be spoken to and retrained. But we can't, if that we're being kept at a distance because of things like that, the whole system is breaking down. It really is. And again, if you had planning officers coming in at the same time as each other on a regular basis, again, if you'd be on the phone to one of them, they could just turn, and they didn't know the answer, they could just turn to their mate further down the room that was knowledgeable in that area and find out for you. And themselves, as officers, I think they were learning from each other, from the older ones, from the more expert ones who'd been there for years. If they're all sitting at home or going off individually looking at things and they're not really getting together much, I think they are going to be losing out on expertise in the same way that we are losing out on expertise. Now, I know COVID was some of the problem, but I do think now it's more of an effort should be made both to get the officers back working together and also to get the officers working with us, please, and helping us and us helping them. I don't know what anyone's got to say on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I just ask a question? I thought the arrangement was that you had to have had training in planning before you could sit on a planning committee. Is that correct? And therefore, a lot of people are sitting on planning committees without full training. Am I correct in my facts? I think this needs to be looked into because obviously planning, particularly with the upcoming strategic plan, will be very, very important because there are quite contentious plans going through that are trying to predate the strategic plan. Sorry, yes, Councillor. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would say, from the view of a new councillor, I think I would definitely say that's the case because there's some planning decisions being made as a new councillor. You're kind of lost thinking why a decision made this way, why not that way. So I think the trainings we've received is just basic. And without such trainings, I don't think you'll be able to understand every ins and out of planning decisions.
So, Andrew, sorry.
I think there was just quite a bit in there, really, if I'm honest. So I'll try and take on some of those, some of the points that have been raised, really. I think you're right. There is training provided for any member who sits on a planning committee, so they understand the significance of the planning framework and how and what decisions they can make sort of legally within a planning space. Really, I would say, and I will talk to my colleagues within the planning team, but I don't think there's any attempt to distance officers from planning officers or officers full stop. Really, we recognise that we're here to affect the smooth running of the council and to liaise and work with councillors is an important part of that. I do know, on the other hand, that a lot of the planning team are tied up in answering queries, not just from members, of course, but also from applicants as well. And a lot of that time answering queries is time that's taken away from actually determining the planning application. And I know that's an ongoing issue in the planning team, so there's always got to be some sort of compromise in terms of allowing the planners to get on and determine planning applications rather than talking to people all the time. How you square that particular circle, I'm still not quite sure, but it is an ongoing challenge. I think there's always more that we can do for councillors, that new councillors in particular, that don't feel that they've been or feel that they don't fully understand enough of the council's operation. I've seen in previous councils officer mentors being provided perhaps to new councillors to help with understanding and just a friendly somebody to talk to and to ask questions, to receive answers. I wonder if that's something that might be useful for the new cohort of incoming members in May, and I'll take that back as an idea perhaps to Democratic Services team is something we might be able to do. And that's as much as I can remember of the questions that were asked, but happy to take on answer any further questions in that space.
I have a question for a committee member, Councillor Ballard. Should I take Councillor Whitbread first or Councillor?
Chairman, take your committee members first.
Yes. Councillor Ballard, please.
Thank you, Chair. And can I just say thank you, Councillor Brady, for making such a, I think, such an insightful point. I'm one of the newer councillors on the district. And what I would say is, whilst the chair is absolutely right in saying that I think you have to have planning training, I remember when I had my induction day, we had done about 5 hours of training with the planning session being right at the end, at around 3:30, 4 o'clock, and we had started at 9 in the morning. Now, not forgetting that being on the planning committee is almost like a quasi-judicial role in many ways. You're making decisions that are really impacting, people's livelihoods kind of in real time. I feel that one possible suggestion come May is either have the planning training perhaps right at the start while everyone's quite fresh and alert, or having a separate day just for planning, because it is quite technical from time to time. And I also think that rather than just going through the theory, perhaps doing a mock application would be really helpful, because it's not really satisfactory for people to learn on the job when we're making quite crucial decisions. So that might be one idea, where we go through a mock application, we go through all the documents that have been submitted, all the kind of thought processes that one would be thinking about when considering an actual application. Just a bit of, it's just a bit of feedback more than anything else. But thank you, Councillor Brady, for raising that point.
Thank you. Christian. And then Councillor Songa, who's been waiting patiently.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to address your committee this evening. It's a really interesting point that's been raised, and this council has always had a really good training programme for members up until the pandemic, which is a good time now to reassess where we are with training. And actually, just hearing what Councillor Barnett's just said is a really strong point. We probably need to revisit and do planning training slightly differently. It's been a concern of mine for many years that members don't understand planning necessarily as much as they should. Especially newer members who come onto the council, get a quick lesson in planning, and even some more established members need a good reminder sometimes on what the roles of planning are, and of course the strength of the local plan that is slowly winding its way to a conclusion, and the importance of that local plan, and sometimes that will lead to bad decision making and mistakes. You've only got to look at Uttlesford, where they've had more than their fair share of problems, are now effectively in special measures. And I think members need to be fully aware of that. Of course, we can't put the genie back in the bottle. The COVID pandemic has changed the way that we do many things. And I think that's probably some of the other issue that Councillor Brady picked up. I can't believe for 1 minute that planning officers would say that they're keeping away from members, because at the end of the day, we've got a democratic duty to our residents to ask questions. And if they are doing that, I'd be the first to query it and ask for officers to come back to me with a really good reason. So I think that's something good to come from this evening that we need to know. But I know, and Councillor Bedford answered questions at full council only a week ago relating to planning services, the new software programme that they're putting in place. But we live in a technology-based age with new challenges, and I think actually from what I've heard tonight, it just underlines the need to get back to a proper training programme. And actually, perhaps because this is the end of the post-pandemic period, perhaps what we need to do is put that in place and say to all members, you need to attend these planning sessions, particularly around planning. But let me say, there are often times when training sessions are cancelled because members just don't attend, and when they are booked, the attendance is appalling. So as members, we have a duty to take up training as well. And I know myself as a long-standing councillor, I'll often think, I know all about that. But actually, on a whole range of issues, including safeguarding, which I think was cancelled last week, including safeguarding and issues like that, you need to keep yourself up to a regular standard. And I think perhaps if there's any lesson to be drawn from this, it's in future, we need a new training programme in place. Perhaps your scrutiny committee might look at that, or one of the others, and actually put it in place for the next municipal year.
Councillor John White.
Thanks. No, I agree with much of that, but just on a point of information, safeguarding wasn't cancelled because I was there, as were a few other members, but yes, probably not as many as should have been. Yeah.
Councillor Sunga, sorry, you've been patiently waiting, and then Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chair. I think I totally agree with the leader. When we got inducted, it was mandatory training sessions, and going not just once but over and over again every year was beneficial because you always learn something new. But of course, we need to understand that parish and town councillors should also be included in any future training sessions because they they are part of the planning process as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify, I actually took the time to look up the Constitution again. Second time this evening it's been mentioned. Page 374, section 65, under section 17, it refers to training. It is fundamental that councillors, including parish and town council members, involved in planning matters should receive appropriate training before being involved in making planning decisions. The council will facilitate such training, which should be regarded as obligatory for all councillors. It goes on to talk about the Standards Committee after that. But I think the general gist of that is that we do need to look again at the training situation. One final bit on there is that councillors should also attend sessions designed to keep them abreast of new developments as specified by the authority. And I think that we should really design a package now around training for the new local plan, because there are a lot of new councillors coming on board that are unaware of previous decisions regarding allocation of sites within the local plan, and it's causing us a lot of headaches. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Andrew, and then Councillor Sapp.
Just a general point, really. As senior officers, we are always available to answer any questions that members might have, whether it's a constitutional point or something about the operation of the council, or any way we can assist at all, particularly new councillors who are still learning how the council operates. We are here to help and will always be willing to do so. So if you have any technical questions or operational questions, then please do come through to us, and we'll try and help in whatever way we can.
Councillor Sam.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to bring us slightly back onto topic on the litmus system. Yes, I agree with what's been said about the planning training. It does need to be revised. It does need to be refreshed. It needs to take into account the local plan, which will get adopted at some point. And it's a very important thing, and that all members participate in that training and any refresher courses going through. But to bring it back onto the litmus thing, I understand that supports video training, etc. I'd make a plea that all such training gets recorded and gets hosted on the litmus system so that people can refer back to it at their leisure. And should some councillors actually miss the live training, they can also always refer back to it.
Thank you. Councillor Bedford, thank you.
Thank you. Just referring back to Mr Small's point there about being available and the need for the training package. I think it's even more essential this year that we get this organised in the next few weeks, because after the May elections we may have quite a few new councillors, and that is exactly around the time when the new local plan will be coming before full council at some point. It's going to be very close to the election dates if everything goes according to plans. So we need to make sure that that package is up to date and necessary and proportionate for what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. Okay, full and detailed discussion, which was useful. Now move on to item 9, the Qualis Quarterly Monitoring Report, which Andrew is going to speak to, please.
First, an apology, Chair. In as much as this item, as Qualis monitoring item, has actually been to Cabinet already, and I think it's been to Council as well. So it comes to Stronger Council. It should have come first, but it's due to the fall of the production meetings and the fall of meetings, unfortunately. So this report actually encompasses the Qualis quarter 4 for their trading year 2021, and also the first quarter of their new trading year, which is trading year 3, which is for their year 21-22. So the two reports come together. because the outturn report takes longer or took longer to produce as it had to go through the audit process. And by the time that had been completed, the quarter one was just about available as well, so the two come wrapped together. And actually, they tell a complete story because of some of the main transactions that happened within Qualis during the year. So I'll go into that in a bit more detail. So the report, the first part of the report presents the quarter four trading position for Qualis, and it does show a loss in the year of just over £2 million. So it's £2,183,000. And the reason for that is because the planning consent for the Epping sites wasn't obtained during the year as it was hoped it would be. So that means that a lot of the costs incurred in developing those sites and getting the applications to approval are still carried on the profit and loss account. At the point in time when planning consent is agreed, then those costs are taken onto the balance sheet and taken out of profit and loss and become almost, well, assets in effect, really becomes added value for the Qualis business model. But until the planning consent is given, they're carried as operational costs, and that's the largest single factor in the reason why Qualis showed a loss for year two of their trading position. Planning consent was actually granted very soon after the end of year two, so just in October, I think it was, October last year, which is part of their first quarter. So as soon as that was obtained, those costs were removed from the profit and loss account, on the profit and loss reserve in the balance sheet, and taken as assets at that point in time. So although there was a loss in the quarter four position, that was reversed in quarter one, in effect. So there was one other issue that was contributed to it, and that was a delay in acquiring the third strategic commercial property that Qualis was tasked with finding last year. It took them a bit longer to find that, and therefore they didn't earn as much in commercial rent on that property as they'd hoped to when they set the business plan for last year. So that accounts for the position at the end of that year. The accounts have been through audit, and the auditors found a couple of minor points which are contained within or reported within this report here. But the auditors are satisfied with the accounts that Qualis have produced and have issued an unqualified opinion on those accounts. The quarter one position is also contained within the report, and the board report are both attached as an appendix. As I say, the key issue in quarter one is that the planning consent was given for the Epping sites, and that meant a large element of cost incurred in bringing those sites forward is taken from the profit and loss account and added to the balance sheet in effect. One part of the 5 sites was following a different trajectory really in terms of planning permission, and that's the Round Hill site in Waltham Abbey. So that's still contained under a separate planning permission, which hasn't been given yet, I don't believe. And so the same position applies really to that site, and so additional cost is still being carried on the profit and loss account relating to Round Hills that won't be removed until Round Hills receives planning permission. So that accounts for the position reported here. Without, had planning consent been given into the last trading year, and the acquisition of the commercial site happened slightly earlier, then Qualis would have made a profit in the year, and that's probably the most important message. And the underlying issue is that Qualis is on track and contributing to the council's overall financial position, as is reported within the document itself. Qualis is paying the council nearly £3 million a year now in interest payments. That, for those members who are party to the budget discussion last week, that is now a significant part of the overall budget plan for next year and years thereafter. and was one of the primary reasons where we were able to balance the budget for 22-23, and will be a significant factor in the medium-term financial plan as well. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Thank you, Chairman, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any members of the committee have any questions? Yes, Councillor John White.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I held back from answering questions at Council because I knew that we'd get this opportunity. I just want to pick up on a couple of things and ask a couple of questions, if that's all right. First of all, on the auditors, that's described as minor points, which I think is fair, but I'm slightly concerned that some of the issues around, for example, documentation, very similar to the issues that the auditors picked up with the Council's account when we had the issues around the statement of reserves figures and so forth. It does suggest perhaps the organisation hasn't quite internalised the importance of those sort of procedures if it's sort of been picked up here as well. On page 34, it talks about a separate report with the operational performance indicators, and I wondered who that went to and where we could see that. On page 53, it talks about the reduction in the void specification has benefited the finances, and it's not great when you read that it's a reduction in quality rather than an increase in efficiency, which has led to an improvement in performance. It'd be interesting, like to understand a little bit more about what that means in practice for the housing stock. And finally, you'll recall that a couple of meetings ago, we were going through the budget monitoring, and there was this issue about exactly what the responsibilities of the council and the HRA were, and what the responsibilities of Qualis were, and there's no spending the HRA as a result of that. And has that been fully resolved now? And what was the impact of that? Thanks.
Thank you.
So I think even the auditors themselves actually referred to the processes issue within the Qualis accounts as fairly minor points, really. And I know Qualis are already actively engaged in putting in place the processes, or documentation of processes, actually. So I know they're actively doing that as we speak, really. So I'm keeping an eye on that, really, and I'm content that that's in hand. So the KPI reporting that's referred to, I think, is a separate report that goes to the Qualis board. So that's referred to within their board report appendix. I will endeavour to get a copy of that and see whether we can build that into the council's own reporting. Depends how it crosses with the service reporting that we do already, and whether it complements it or whether it adds to it. So I'll see what they have in that space and see whether it can be added to the council's overall reporting that we do to this committee. I'm not sure about the issue in terms of reduction in quality that you referred to. So 53. So the reduction agreed SLA income. So I think we negotiated a discount in terms of some of the works that were done, in terms of the price for some of those works. And that feeds through in terms of, I think that comes in through as a discount in terms of the cost we pay into the housing revenue account. So I know work was done around making sure that the specifications weren't over-specified. So I think that's one of the key issues, is in terms of making sure that we weren't asking for unnecessary works to be carried out in terms of the housing revenue account stock. In particular, that we weren't doing works to properties that didn't need it. So there may be a blanket policy of replacing bathrooms, for example, even though the bathrooms might have had a number of years left in them. So there's something about making... I think it's an ongoing issue, I'm honest with you. So the new stock condition survey is currently being commissioned at the moment, and that will give us more granularly detail upon which properties need replacing and which ones don't. Without that information, then the danger is that you're just doing works to stock that doesn't need to be done, and then therefore wasting money or spending money earlier than you need to, really. I can find out more information about that particular point and come back with a note in the minutes if that helps. And the final point was on, excuse me, the split. I wasn't sure I quite understood the point about the HRA split. Sorry, it's me.
Well, there's a bit of to and fro about who exactly was responsible for paying for various repairs and so forth. I had an example in a property in my ward, and then a couple of meetings ago we had the overspend reported on some of the HRA repairs, which I think was linked to this. And I was sort of just seeking reassurance that that was teething problems which have been bottomed out. But if you need to go away and find out about it, or I can, dig out the reference if that helps.
If I might talk to you separately afterwards. I know we did do quite a lot of work with Qualis around making sure that the contract worked effectively. So there were some teething operational issues, and which were addressed as part of kind of the contract coming to life. So we spent quite a bit of time making sure that the contract operates smoothly, and I believe it does. One of the things that's in the work programme for the internal audit function of the council is to do an audit on the housing repairs contract. So that's one of the things they're currently working through now. So the Qualis contract in terms of housing repairs, to make sure that that's operating as effectively as it should do. And there will be a report to Audit and Governance Committee in the not too distant future upon the findings of that audit. So that should give members more confidence or reassurance that the contract's operating in the way that it should do. But I will catch up with you later just to make sure I've addressed your point properly.
Any other comments? And we accept this. It has, as Andrew said, it's been presented. This is for the third time, but it's obviously an important document, and thank you. Move on now to the last item of the agenda, which is the next meeting, which is the 14th of April, to be noted. And I then draw the meeting to an end at 8:17. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.